I'm gonna tell you guys the saddest teacher story. Actually, not that sad, but looking back, it's kind of sad. A bunch of kids had dropped out of my teacher's class. I don't blame them. That class was freaking hard. And I tried to drop out too, but my guidance counselor said my grade was too high. At a C. It was the lowest grade I've ever gotten in high school. Anyway, class literally only has like 12 students at this point. Even though we all really liked the teacher, his class was so unnecessarily hard. He was algebra 2, by the way. To alleviate some of the math stress, my teacher suggested that we do something. A bunch of students suggested a movie night. And he's like, oh, well, obviously we can't play a movie during class. But he's like, how about after class? Everyone's like, yes, we could bring snacks. We can watch a movie. People start naming different movies. Everyone lands on The Princess Bride, which is a movie I hadn't seen before. But I love movies, so I was down. He's like, okay, this Friday after school, just come, bring your snacks, and we're gonna watch the movie. After class, I ask if I can bring my cousin. He's like, yeah, if there's space, she can come. So Friday rolls around, he reminds everybody about the movie. Everyone's like, yeah, we're excited. Cousin links up with me after school, and we walk to the classroom. We walk in holding 2 giant bags of chips, and there was no... Okay, so this is part 2 to my sad teacher story. Me and my cousin walk in holding 2 giant bags of chips. Party size, because there's gonna be a bunch of kids here, right? No one was in there. The only other person who ended up showing up was my friend Hannah. So it was just the 3 of us, and one of us wasn't even a student. So we kind of sit there waiting, and he goes, well, I guess I should start the movie. We open up the chips and just enjoy for ourselves. You know what? That's what we did. We loved it. We had a good time, just the 3 of us. I thought it was so dumb that this entire class made it seem like they were super excited to come to this movie, and they didn't come. Never stay after school. This was what? This movie wasn't even my idea. It was the other student's idea. I felt bad for my teacher. He kind of just had to sit there with basically an empty classroom. I know he's never doing that again because he stayed after work for us. He had everything set up. On Monday, he goes, so where was everybody? They're all like, sorry, we didn't feel like it. Oh my God. I'm gonna tell you guys about the first time I ever got scammed. I'm trying to remember my age. I think I was 9. So I was friends with a bunch of other kids in the neighborhood. I know, a weird concept. Anyway, these kids were a bit older than me. Most of them were like in middle school. One of the boys, I'd say he was about 12, was going around the neighborhood trying to sell some of his items. He was encouraging the other kids to buy from him or to trade something better. I wanted to be a part of this, so I asked if I could sell him anything. He said, oh, you have a skateboard, right? It was a skateboard that I had begged my mom to buy me. He was like, oh, if you give me your skateboard, I'll give you some money for it. I was like, really? I run inside, grab my skateboard. Mom was like, what are you doing with that? I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna go do something. I'll be right back. I was so stupid. Kid grabs his skateboard. He's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I'm like, so how much are you gonna give me for it? I'm Latina, we don't have allowances. I've never had actual money before. He goes, oh, I have to go back to my house. I'll get the money and I'll bring it back to you. So he takes the skateboard, leaves, and I'm standing there for a good half hour. I was expecting 10 bucks, maybe 5. You will not believe what this kid came back with. This is part 2 of the first time that I ever got scammed. This kid left and said he'd be right back with the money. I was standing on the street corner, waiting for this kid. I was starting to get nervous. So much time was passing by, and my mom was waiting for me. I was nervous because I needed to prove to her that I did not just give away my skateboard for no reason. That this kid was actually going to give me enough money for it. She was going to be proud of me, I don't know. I had no idea where this kid lived, but I start walking down the street in the way that he left so that maybe I could see him. I walk for a while and I finally see him walking down the street. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness. I go up to him and I'm like, hey, do you have the money? Starts the sentence with, so here's the thing. He begins to tell me that he actually doesn't have the money right now. That'll pay me later. But in the meantime, here's a baseball that his dad told him is going to be worth something someday. I take it from him and I go home and I start to cry. I walk through the door and my mom's like, where's your skateboard? I try to explain to her, I'm like, this is actually a baseball and it's going to be worth something someday. I never see that kid again and my mom was furious with me. You guys, this is why I never let anybody copy my homework anymore. I must have been in like 11th grade. For a while, people that I wasn't really all that close with kept asking me to send them the homework. It was like 3 different people. I barely knew them. They would find me on Facebook and they would be like, hey, oh my gosh, do you have this assignment? I want to preface this by saying I'm a huge people pleaser. Also, I never had any issues with anybody in school. I didn't see why I shouldn't do this. So I would just send them the homework and they'd be like, oh, I'm gonna change it for sure. Yeah, just make sure you do it because I don't want to get in trouble. Again, I just didn't really want any unnecessary attention. I just wanted to finish the school year and just, go where I need to go. I wasn't really all that close with these people. So one day I'm sitting in my poetry class, which is like literally my least favorite class. Not because of poetry, but because of the teacher. Oh, I couldn't stand her. The bell rings, dismissing everyone, but she's like, Joe, I need to talk to you. Like, okay. Oh, I just wanted to leave. She tries to be all clever and smart and goes, look at this. She shows me a different student's paper. I'm like, okay. Then she shows me mine. This is part 2 as to why I don't let people copy my homework anymore. Again, the teacher showed me another student's work, and then she showed me mine, and they were identical. Not a single thing changed. I'm also adding that this student who she was showing me the paper of wasn't the student I sent my homework to. So in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, I sent my homework to someone. They sent it to someone else, and that person didn't bother to change anything about the work. She was standing there looking at me like, and what can I do? She's like, what do you see here? I'm like, they're the same. They are exactly the same. By the way, the other student was also there. She made them stay as well. Teacher goes, what would you like me to do about this? I just want to leave. I just say, I don't know, we ended up with the same answers. She explains that we're both getting a 0. Tells me, specifically me, not to cheat. What? I walk out the door, she yells, I don't want to ever catch you cheating again. Oh my god. It's to say I wasn't giving my homework out anymore. I wasn't the one cheating. Okay, here is the biggest scandal that happened at my school. Just a disclaimer, I wasn't at the school when this happened. I think attended the year or two after. But we all kept hearing about it for a long time. Okay, so at my high school, before I started attending there was a principal. Duh. And he was known for being very eccentric and performing acts of hypnosis on students. He would come into psychology classes, I think lunchrooms and stuff like that to perform it on students. I guess it was meant to be like a fun thing. Like, look how cool our principal is. Unfortunately, and the way that I understand that this happened is that the principal asked the student to come into his office. I guess the student wasn't performing well in school, and so he hypnotized him. Again, from my understanding, a few days later, the kid killed himself. Gosh, I hope this doesn't get taken down. This became national news. It is fair to say that that principal doesn't work there anymore. We got a new principal. So when I started going to school there, we kept hearing everything that had happened before. But also our new principal was very into magic. He would do card tricks and perform shows and do things like that. Okay, this is the biggest scandal that happened at my school part 2. I told you in part 1 was everything that I had learned just going to the school and hearing about it. I looked up the case for myself and oh my gosh, it's so much worse. Apparently it was 3 students who killed themselves. One of them was a girl who asked the principal for guidance and he hypnotized her. Another student who went to him died the next day after being hypnotized, not a couple days after. And another student drove himself off the highway. That's terrible! Apparently he had hypnotized more than 75 students. One basketball player claimed that he was hypnotized over 40 times for concentration. Also, he served no jail time. He admitted to practicing hypnosis without a license. And all 3 families settled. They each received about $200,000. It's unclear whether the hypnosis and the suicides are linked, but it's what the families believe. Oh my god, that's crazy. This is the reason I always put things back exactly where I find them. Why I hate borrowing things. When I was a kid, me and my cousins loved to play pretend. To pretend we were cavemen, we used to pretend we were characters on a TV show. But this time they came over, we decided to play like secret agent. I was like 8 at this time. Our knowledge of secret agents is very limited. I just ran around the house and grabbed things that looked cool, looked leathery, and just added to the secret agent stuff. One of the things that I ended up grabbing was my dad's passport. It looked cool to me, the inside was shiny, I thought it was like super cool. We used it in part of our missions. The passport was sitting really neatly on top of my dad's desk in his office. I just thought it was like a random booklet. My cousin decided to go outside because it'd be way cooler if we were like hiding under trees and like jumping out at each other. Bring all the items, including the passport. I don't remember exactly what happened. I gave the passport to one of my younger cousins. One of us had like a notebook, a ballpoint pen. One of us had like a plastic gun. An hour or so passes, my cousins leave. I go back inside thinking all is well in the world. Can't even explain the chaos that ensued. I was freaking out he couldn't find his passport. My mom suggested asking us and he described it. Part 2 of why I don't take things without asking and why I never borrow things. I think I mentioned that my dad had a flight in a couple of hours. But the passport was set up all ready to go. My dad comes up to me and asks me, hey, do you know where my passport is? Even though you shouldn't have been in my office in the first place. He describes it to me and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Do I say that? No. I'm like, I blame it on my younger cousins. I say I saw them with it, that they were running around with it. Dad calls my aunt. He needs to leave. My heart is racing so fast because if he finds out it's me, I'm gonna die. He's getting all upset with my mom and of course it's not her fault. How could you let this happen? You should have been watching them. My dad called the airline, called a bunch of other things to see what he could do. Needless to say, my dad did not fly. We had to hear about it for the longest time. Not allowed to touch his things and I don't want to touch his things. By the way, this is a fake story that was completely made up, but it 100% sounds like something my parents would do and my cousins would do and what I would do. I was like, is this real? Did this happen? Don't want to confuse anyone.